Hey guys, it looks like I had a busier weekend than I thought for Super Bowl. So tonight I'm just going to give you my review of Legends of Tomorrow, Season 1, Episode 3, Blood Ties. Now, there are three different storylines going on, one of which is when Sarah convinces Rip that, considering Savage might not be easy to kill, they don't know if they'll be able to change, and Rip is questioning whether or not they'll be able to change the timeline. Sarah mentions how Ra's al Ghul taught her, if you can't cut off your enemy's head, take his heart. And that's her analogy for they should go after his funds, since that's obviously what helped him rise to power. And maybe that would diminish his, and then he'll just be a regular. As Sarah says, she could just be Savage will just be a regular guy with an extended lifespan. So they infiltrate, and the nice thing about this sequence, and this is what I was disappointed about Arrow, I want to see more of Sarah's backstory with the League of Assassins. But at least you get more clues as to like what kind of training she's gotten and what places she's traveled to, based on how Rip and Sarah go into this private bank disguised as this couple, but but when they're looking at a guy named Mr. Blake who's supposed to have access to Savage's funds, after he steps out of his office, that Sarah comments that they've been made based on, she notices, like, as they walked in, that the receptionist had a Beretta hidden behind the desk and hit a silent alarm, and how they were South African, and how the guards were South African mercenaries because of the scars they had on their necks. And she's proven right when they are surrounded by them, but Sarah's able to basically kick their asses and beat the crap out of them, and even have this really cool scene where, even though she's only fighting with knives, that she's able to kick Mr. Blake's ass, even though he's fighting with a katana, and like flip him over. And she nearly lives into her Lazarus Pit bloodlust when she's about to decapitate him, until Rip stops him, saying he couldn't access the funds, they still need him alive for information. And Rip questions what happened during the fight, and Rip doesn't realize, and Sarah has to explain, Rip didn't realize that the bloodlust was a side effect of being brought back from the Lazarus Pit, and how she thinks of herself as a monster. She sees herself as a monster for what she nearly did and what the bloodlust is doing to her. So they ascend, and so they capture Mr. Blake, and they start interrogating him. And he mentioned something interesting about Rip, which they mentioned during like the opening scene of the show, is that Blake was told about Rip and how he was and Savage originally knew Rip as Karib, and and that's when Sarah takes Rip outside the interrogation room, and says how Rip had actually traveled back to ancient Egypt before he recruited the legends in order to try to kill Savage, but failed to but hesitate but couldn't but hesitated and failed to kill him in order to avenge his family. And Sarah tries to reassure him that killing is never easy, especially for a good man. And but Rip retorts that, Sarah, killing doesn't make you a monster. Having the chance to avenge your family and not taking it is. So after they're interrogating Mr. Blake, he eventually tells them about the vessel and how it's Savage's most prized possession. And so they go to this place called the Great Hill Building, where Savage is hosting a ball, and they sneak in thanks to Mr. Blake. They throw him into the trunk. And there's one thing I found kind of ironic, is when they're at the ball, Sarah's dressed up, and Rip asks her to dance, and Sarah says she's not much of a dancer, which is kind of like, I guess, like a tongue-in-cheek thing, or something. It's kind of ironic, considering, if you know anything about Katie Lott, she started out as a backup dancer, and for singers like Lady Gaga, and also as a stunt woman. So, which is why her fight scenes are so as graceful and look as good as they do. And then she talks has this conversation about Rip says that she doesn't have this. Rip says that she doesn't see him. She doesn't see Sarah as a monster. She just sees somebody who's tormented by something she can't control. Sarah says there's no magical cure for what I'm going through, and Rip says yes, there is. It's called being better. It's called going on with your life, moving forward. Just like Rip said he had to do when his wife and when his family was first killed. He didn't think he could go on, but he just says he had to just keep going forward and not give in to any kind of pain, not let any kind of pain or dark urges like overtake them. And they finally decide to, and when they realize more of the South African mercenaries are there, they decide to sneak into the. They decided to sneak past the guards into the secret room because, as Blake revealed in during the interrogation, that the vessel was actually Carter's body. They didn't know what they were going to do with it, but then Mr. Blake finally somehow got out of the trunk somehow and told everyone about Rip and Sarah's presence. And so when they're being captured, they're brought before Vandal Savage, and he tells them that he doesn't have his power doesn't come from economic fortune. It's the fact that Carter and subsequently Kara's blood could be used to give to his followers, who are devoted followers, and give them extended longevity for at least another 100 years or so. So he basically cuts open Carter's neck, and it's they drink, and everybody's drinking blood from his corpse. And this is a scene where he's basically become, Casper Crump as Savage, because of more intense performance, albeit hammy, but you just get a sense that even though he hasn't been the biggest, you have a sense that he's becoming more comfortable in the role and becoming a better villain, and naturally Rip and Sarah are horrified by what's going on right now. Now, while this was going on, the other storylines was with Ray and Stein. They both discovered their fragments of the dagger that Savage has stabbed Kendra with in her system, and that's slowly killing her. And so Adam decides the only way to save her is that even though science says it's too dangerous, Ray decides to use his suit to shrink himself down and get injected into Kara's bloodstream in order to use his lasers to destroy the fragments in her system. But the suit starts malfunctioning, and he hesitates and says he has to get it, and then he gets. And he has to escape. He starts panicking. He has to escape, and he seems to lose his confidence because he feels like he's still grieving about his wife getting killed by Slade Wilson during the events of season 2, where he caused that huge raid of Central City. It's not Central City, Starling City, and he's also upset about and he's also afraid of not being able to save Kendra like he couldn't save his wife, and how he's upset about how he's still moping about how Stein doesn't remember him, and so he gives him a pep talk about how he does remember him. Stein says he did remember him. He just wanted to take him down a couple of pegs, and that he was able to solve an equation in a shorter amount of time than Stein did, and so it boosts his confidence, and he's able to go back into Kendra's bloodstream and destroy the fragments. But there was an interesting and just a funny joke during his first trip inside Kara's body, where Stein says you should be able to see the fragments. That's the size of the iceberg. You possibly can't miss it. It's well, that's what they said on the Titanic, and you can tell Victor Garber just starts cringing, as just knowing that the writers did that as a nod to his appearance in that movie, where it's just you bastard, you bastards. But Ray's able to successfully get all the fragments out, and then Stein reveals that he lied again to boost his confidence, saying he really doesn't remember him. He said he has tons of exceptional students, and that it would be hard, and that it would be hard to remember every one of them, and which is like pretty realistic and pretty realistic. I mean, it's like he's been teaching for like God knows how many years, and also being, and it's like you can only remember like so many students that you can during those years, and it just seems like kind of petty. It seems like kind of petty that he's just like, oh, my life didn't matter, and people didn't, my professor doesn't remember me, etc., etc. When it's like they changed the name of Starling City to Star City after you, and it's like you apparently matter to people, and it just seems like, again, like he's just being like really petty, and that's what I just thought was like the weakest of the storylines of the episode. Now the third storyline that's going on is that Captain Cold and Heatwave are pissed that Rip is taking Sarah to do reconnaissance and infiltrate this bank, and they're tired. They're upset they're getting sidelined again. So Snard, Captain Cold, is able to like pickpocket Rip and is able to get like a drop, like what looks like a enlarged like thumb drive or a drive or something out of his from Rip, and Jax is already had making repairs to like a jump ship, for part as like a separate ship for the Wave Rider, like one of those smaller ships they have like on Sci-Fi to separate from the bigger ship. So he's repairing the jump ship with an apparently easy to follow instruction manual, and Snard and Roy Heatwave convince him to take the jump ship to Central City and to steal an emerald from the museum. And it turns out that this emerald was going to be stolen by Snard's father, Louis Snard, and that's what caused him to end up in jail and for 5 years, and why he came out of it being this abusive parent to both Snard and his younger sister Lisa. And he decides that he figures that if he steals it, that he'll save his family from the abuse he goes through. And so he's able to steal the emerald, break into his own house, and he's confronted by his younger self. And this is where like you see where Wentworth Miller gives his really good performance, where he's not just like being cocky and whatnot. This is where you see him as like very vulnerable and like teary-eyed, and telling his younger self not to let anybody hurt him mentally or emotionally. And that's where he's confronted by a younger version of his dad at gunpoint, and just tells Leonard tells his younger self to go upstairs and tells him that he's doing him a favor, and that the only reason why and Leonard tells him, I've seen what kind of man you've become, and the only reason why I'm not killing you now is that my sister hasn't been born yet, and just like walks off. And that's when he gets contacted by Ray and Stein, because apparently, I guess because there's some kind of psychic link between Carter and Kendra, in which Kendra starts like chanting in her sleep or shouting in her sleep that they're in trouble, that Rip and Sarah are in trouble, and they don't understand how she knows that, but they tell them that they have to go immediately to the Great Hill building to rescue Rip and Sarah. So they bust in, they start beating up Savage's henchmen, and Rip gets into a fight with Savage and stabs him, but he not only leaves, but they're able to get Carter's body. And this is like the biggest complaint everybody has about the episode, is that they didn't make it a priority to bring Savage's body back onto the ship, and then when Kendra wakes up, have him stab Savage with a dagger, and end his threat once and for all. But It's like, I get you. I mean, I get it. They're not going to do that because they have 13 episodes left in the season, but at least come up with like a justifiable reason for why, in the context of the show, like why they're not going to do it then and there. Especially since Rip finds like the locket inside. Savage finds Rip's locket with the picture of his wife and daughter, and he finds out about this is why he's coming. Rip is coming after him, and he's basically sealed his family's fate, and now like Savage is gonna remember them and just kill them just to stick it to Rip. But eventually they escape. Kendra's fine, and they get Carter's body and give both Carter and Professor Borman proper burials. And Rip tells them that they decided they gotta be in sync and start working as a team, and he agrees with Snart where he says, "You don't ditch us, we won't ditch you." And so they travel until the episode ends with them traveling to 1986, and apparently that's the next location as to where Savage is active. Overall, pretty good episode. Like I said, Rip, like Adam's storyline was the weakest, and it was stupid how this kind of left Savage there. So I give it like an 8 out of 10. But hopefully, this show is definitely still finding its footing, and hopefully it'll get better as the show goes on. But what do you guys think? If you guys like this episode, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this video, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.